a headache and confusion. Dylan Ashford woke up with his head pounding like someone was using a hammer inside his skull. The bright California sunshine poured through the tall windows of his Pacific Palisades mansion, making him squeeze his eyes shut against the painful light. His mouth tasted like old coffee mixed with regret, and his body felt heavy, like he had been wrestling with shadows all night long. He was lying on his leather couch in the living room, still wearing his expensive suit from yesterday, though his tie was gone and his shirt was half unbuttoned. One of his Italian leather shoes dangled from his foot while the other sat abandoned near the fireplace. Dylan groaned and tried to sit up, pressing his palms against his temples as memories from last night tried to push through the fog in his brain. There had been whiskey. Lots of whiskey. And anger. So much anger that it burned in his chest even now. James Blackwell, his former best friend and business partner, had stolen his latest software design and sold it to their biggest competitor. The betrayal had hit Dylan like a truck, especially since James had been someone he trusted completely. They had built their tech company together from nothing, working out of a garage just like all the success stories. But James had wanted more, faster, and he did not care who he hurt to get it. Dylan remembered coming home last night, furious and hurt, wanting to drink until the pain went away. He remembered his hands shaking as he poured glass after glass of expensive scotch. He remembered the storm starting outside, rain hammering against the windows like angry fists. But after that, everything became blurry and uncertain. Then he heard it. A gentle sound coming from his kitchen. The soft clink of a spoon against ceramic. The quiet hum of someone moving around with careful, practiced movements. Dylan froze, his heart suddenly racing. Nobody should be in his house right now. His housekeeper did not work weekends, and his assistant never came by without calling first. The woman in his kitchen. Dylan pushed himself off the couch, his legs unsteady beneath him. He walked slowly toward the kitchen, each step making his headache worse. When he reached the doorway, he stopped completely, his breath catching in his throat. Standing by his stove, wearing nothing but a white dress shirt that clearly belonged to him, was a young woman with warm brown skin and long dark hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders. The shirt hung loose on her smaller frame, falling to mid-thigh, and she had rolled up the sleeves to keep them out of her way. Her feet were bare against his cold kitchen tiles, and she moved with quiet confidence as she stirred something in a mug. The morning light coming through the window made her glow, and for a moment Dylan wondered if he was still drunk or maybe dreaming. She looked like she belonged there, comfortable in his space in a way that made no sense at all. The woman turned when she felt his presence, and her dark eyes met his with a mixture of warmth and something else he could not quite read. Maybe amusement. Maybe concern. She smiled softly, and Dylan felt his heart do something strange in his chest. "Good morning, Dylan," she said, her voice smooth and calm, like they had known each other for years instead of hours. Dylan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just stood there, staring at her, trying to understand how this beautiful stranger had ended up in his kitchen wearing his clothes. His mind raced through possibilities, but none of them made sense. He looked down at the shirt again, then back at her face, searching for answers. The confession he could not remember. "I know this looks strange," the woman said, setting down her spoon and turning to face him fully. "My name is Rosa. Rosa Delgado. I came here last night for a job interview. For the housemaid position." Dylan blinked, fragments of memory starting to surface. Yes, he remembered now. His regular housekeeper had quit suddenly, and his assistant had scheduled interviews. But that was supposed to be today, not last night. And it definitely was not supposed to involve anyone sleeping over or wearing his clothes. "The storm," Rosa continued, watching his confused expression. "It got really bad right when I arrived. You opened the door, and you were already drinking. You looked lost, Dylan. Really lost. And when the power went out, I helped fix your generator. My clothes got soaked, so I borrowed your shirt. I stayed because I was worried about you. Dylan rubbed his face with both hands, trying to make his brain work faster. Did I do something inappropriate? He asked, his voice rough with worry and shame. Did I say something wrong? I need to know. Rosa shook her head quickly. No, nothing like that. You were a perfect gentleman, actually. Just very sad and very drunk. Then why are you looking at me like that? Dylan asked, frustration mixing with curiosity. Like you know something I don't. Rosa picked up her mug and took a slow sip, her eyes never leaving his face. Because you told me things last night, Dylan. Important things. Things that men usually keep locked deep inside until they can't hold them anymore. Dylan felt ice water run through his veins. What did I say? Rosa walked closer to him, stopping just a few feet away. The morning light caught the gold flecks in her brown eyes, and Dylan found himself unable to look away. She spoke softly but clearly, making sure every word landed. You told me you were tired of being alone. You said you were surrounded by people who only wanted something from you, people who saw your money instead of seeing you. You said your best friend betrayed you, and the woman you almost married only cared about your bank account. Dylan felt his throat tighten. Those words sounded like something he would say, something he had thought 1,000 times but never spoke out loud. Rosa continued, her voice gentle but honest. You said you wished someone real would walk into your life. Someone who saw you as just a person, not as a dollar sign or a business opportunity. You said you were so tired of pretending to be strong when inside you felt broken. The weight of truth. The words hit Dylan like physical blows. He stepped backward, his hand finding the kitchen counter to steady himself. His heart pounded in his chest, and he felt exposed in a way he never had before. Those were his deepest thoughts, his most private fears, things he never admitted even to himself when he was sober. I said all that, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Rosa nodded. And more. You cried, Dylan. Not a lot, but enough for me to see how much pain you were carrying. You asked me not to leave because you did not want to be alone with all that hurt. Dylan felt shame and vulnerability wash over him like a wave. He wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, to build his walls back up and pretend none of this mattered. But something in Rosa's eyes stopped him. She was not judging him. She was not looking at him with pity or disgust. She was looking at him like he was human, like being hurt and lonely and scared was normal and okay. Why did you stay? Dylan asked, his voice cracking slightly. You could have left once the storm passed. You could have called someone. Why did you spend the night taking care of a drunk stranger? Rosa set her mug down and crossed her arms, not in a defensive way but in a thoughtful one. Because I have been where you are. Maybe not with your money or your problems, but I know what it feels like to be alone in a room full of people. I know what it feels like when the person you trust most stabs you in the back. And I know what it feels like to think nobody sees the real you. Her words created a connection between them, invisible but powerful. Dylan felt something shift inside his chest, something that had been frozen for a long time starting to thaw. I grew up in Brooklyn, Rosa continued. My father left when I was 7. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. I raised my little sister Carmen while my mom was at work. I learned early that most people will take whatever they can get from you and give nothing back. But I also learned that sometimes, when someone is drowning, you throw them a rope even if you don't know them. Dylan stared at her, seeing her differently now. Not just as a beautiful woman in his kitchen, but as someone who understood. Someone who had fought her own battles and survived. Last night, Rosa said quietly, you told me something else. Something I think you need to hear again now that you're sober. Dylan held his breath, both wanting and fearing what she would say next. Rosa's eyes softened, and her voice became almost a whisper. You said that if someone like me had walked into your life earlier, maybe you would not have wasted so much time on people who did not deserve you. You said I made you feel safe for the first time in years. Everything changes. The kitchen fell silent except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs outside. Dylan felt his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. This woman, this stranger named Rosa who had appeared during a storm and stayed through his darkest moment, had seen him at his most vulnerable and had not run away. She had not taken photos to sell to tabloids. She had not called friends to gossip. She had not tried to manipulate or take advantage. She had simply stayed and made sure he was safe. And now she was standing in his kitchen, wearing his shirt, telling him truths he desperately needed to hear. I don't know what to say, Dylan admitted, his voice raw with emotion. I don't remember saying any of that, but it sounds true. It feels true. Rosa smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and made her whole face light up. You don't have to say anything right now. You probably need coffee and aspirin and some time to process everything. Why are you being so kind to me? Dylan asked, genuinely confused. You don't know me. I'm just another rich guy with problems. Rosa shook her head firmly. No, you're not. Last night I saw past all the money and the mansion and the expensive suit. I saw a good person who has been hurt by people he trusted. And that person deserves kindness just as much as anyone else. Dylan felt something crack open inside him, some wall he had built so high that he forgot it was there. Tears pricked at his eyes, and he blinked them back quickly, embarrassed. I should probably go, Rosa said gently, picking up her mug. I need to get home and check on my sister. And you need time to figure out what you want to do next. Panic flared in Dylan's chest. The thought of her leaving, of this connection disappearing, felt wrong somehow. Wait, he said quickly. Please don't go yet. At least let me make you breakfast. Or pay you for your time last night. Or something. Rosa laughed softly. I don't want money, Dylan. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Then have coffee with me, Dylan said, surprising himself with his urgency. Just for a few minutes. Please. Rosa studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. Just coffee. As Dylan moved to start the coffee maker, his hands shaking slightly, he realized that something fundamental had changed. This woman had walked into his life during a storm, and somehow everything felt different now. Like maybe, just maybe, he did not have to face everything alone anymore. He glanced at Rosa, who was looking out the window at the ocean, the morning light making her glow. And for the first time in months, Dylan Ashford felt something he had almost forgotten existed. Hop the night before the previous evening had started with dark clouds rolling in from the Pacific Ocean, turning the sky deep purple and gray. Dylan Ashford had arrived home just as the first raindrops began to fall, his mind spinning with rage and betrayal. James Blackwell, the man he had considered his brother, had stolen everything. The software they had developed together, the algorithms Dylan had spent 2 years perfecting, all of it was now in the hands of their biggest competitor. And James had walked away with $20 million. Dylan had gone straight to his liquor cabinet, pulling out the most expensive bottle he could find. He did not even bother with ice or a proper glass at first. He just drank, letting the burn in his throat distract from the burn in his chest. The rain grew heavier, pounding against the windows like it was trying to break through. Lightning split the sky, and thunder shook the walls of his mansion. He had been sitting in the darkness, the bottle half empty, when the doorbell rang. At first, Dylan thought he imagined it. Who would be at his door during a storm like this? But the bell rang again, longer this time, followed by a hesitant knock. Dylan stumbled to the door, his vision slightly blurred, his balance uncertain. When he pulled it open, he found a young woman standing in the rain, completely soaked, her dark hair plastered to her face and shoulders. She clutched a folder to her chest, trying to protect it from the downpour. I am so sorry to bother you, sir, she had said, her voice trembling from cold. I am Rosa Delgado. I was scheduled for a housemaid interview today. I know the time is wrong, but the buses stopped running because of the storm, and I walked here from the main road. I did not want to miss this opportunity. Dylan had stared at her, his alcohol-fogged brain trying to process her words. An interview. Right. His assistant had mentioned something about that. But it was supposed to be tomorrow, not tonight. Or was it tonight? He could not remember anymore. You walked here in this storm? Dylan had asked, his words slightly slurred. Rosa nodded, water dripping from her chin. Yes, sir. I really need this job. I have been trying to find steady work for 6 months now. My sister is sick, and we have medical bills. I cannot afford to miss any opportunity. Something in her desperation, in the way she stood there shivering but refusing to give up, had touched something in Dylan's drunken state. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in. The power goes out. Rosa had entered carefully, leaving puddles on his marble floor. She apologized repeatedly, but Dylan waved her words away. He was too drunk and too sad to care about wet floors. He had offered her a towel, but before he could find one, the lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. The mansion plunged into darkness, with only the occasional flash of lightning to show the way. Dylan heard Rosa gasp softly, and he felt his way along the wall, trying to remember where he kept the flashlights. The backup generator should kick in, Dylan had mumbled, but minutes passed and nothing happened. The house remained dark except for the small emergency lights along the baseboards. Mr. Ashford, Rosa had said from somewhere in the darkness. Where is your electrical panel? The generator might need to be reset manually. Dylan had tried to explain, but his words came out jumbled and confused. Rosa had found a flashlight in the kitchen drawer and, despite being a guest in a strange house, had taken charge. She found the panel, found the generator room, and within 20 minutes had the power running again. When the lights came back on, Dylan was sitting on the floor in the hallway, his back against the wall, the bottle still in his hand. He looked up at Rosa, who was even more soaked now from going outside to check the generator, and something inside him broke open. You did not have to do that, he had whispered. You could have just waited inside where it was dry. Rosa had smiled gently. I grew up fixing things, Mr. Ashford. When something is broken, I fix it if I can. It is just who I am. Dylan, he had said. Call me Dylan. Mr. Ashford makes me sound like my father, and I never want to be like him. The confession. What happened next was something Dylan could only remember in pieces now, fragments of conversation that felt more like a dream than reality. He remembered Rosa bringing him water and making him drink it. He remembered her sitting nearby, not too close but close enough that he did not feel alone. He remembered the storm raging outside while inside, for the first time in months, he felt a strange sense of calm. And then he had started talking. The alcohol had loosened every lock he had kept on his feelings, and words poured out of him like water from a broken dam. He told Rosa about James, about how they had started their company in a garage with nothing but ideas and determination. He told her about the late nights, the failures, the small victories that eventually became big ones. He told her about the moment he found out about the betrayal, how James had looked him in the eye and lied. Everyone wants something from me, Dylan had said, his voice breaking. My mother wants me to marry someone from the right family to improve our social standing. My board members want me to make decisions that benefit them, not the company. Women I date want access to my money and my connections. Even James, the one person I thought was different, just wanted what he could take. Rosa had listened without interrupting, her dark eyes reflecting the soft emergency lights. She did not offer empty comfort or meaningless platitudes. She just listened, and somehow that was exactly what Dylan needed. I am so tired, Dylan had whispered, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. I am tired of pretending to be strong. I am tired of being alone in rooms full of people. I am tired of wondering if anyone would care about me if I lost everything tomorrow. I would, Rosa had said softly. Dylan had looked at her, confused. You do not even know me. I know enough, Rosa had replied. I know you are hurting. I know you have been betrayed by someone you loved. I know you are trying to hold yourself together even though you feel like you are falling apart. And I know that you deserve kindness, even if you do not believe it right now. Those words had broken something in Dylan. He had cried then, really cried, for the first time since the betrayal. And Rosa had stayed, sitting beside him in the hallway of his enormous empty mansion, keeping him company through the worst night of his life. Morning decisions. Now, standing in his kitchen with Rosa in the morning light, Dylan felt the weight of those memories pressing down on him. He poured 2 cups of coffee with shaking hands, trying to steady himself. I am embarrassed, Dylan admitted, sliding a cup across the counter to Rosa. I never break down like that. I never let anyone see me weak. Being hurt is not the same as being weak, Rosa said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. And being honest about your pain takes more strength than pretending everything is fine. Dylan sipped his coffee, studying her face. She had pulled her damp hair back into a loose bun, and in the morning light he could see the tiredness around her eyes. She had stayed up most of the night taking care of him, and now she was standing here offering him wisdom instead of judgment. Tell me about your sister, Dylan said, wanting to know more about her. You said she is sick. Rosa's expression softened with worry and love. Carmen is 19. She has a heart condition that requires surgery. We have been saving for it, but medical bills keep piling up faster than I can earn money. That is why I need this job so badly. The hospital is willing to wait a little longer, but not much. How much do you need? Dylan asked. Rosa shook her head quickly. No. I am not telling you that because I want your money, Dylan. I am telling you because you asked. I work for what I need. I do not take handouts. It would not be a handout, Dylan said. It would be payment for saving my life last night. I did not save your life, Rosa protested. I just fixed your generator and made sure you did not choke on your own vomit. That is basic human decency, not something you owe me money for. Dylan felt a smile tug at his lips despite everything. You are probably the only person in Los Angeles who would turn down free money from a billionaire. I am not turning down the job, Rosa clarified. If you still want to hire me as your housekeeper, I would be grateful. But I earn my pay through work, not through charity. Before Dylan could respond, his phone buzzed insistently on the counter. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. 15 missed calls from his mother, Patricia. 10 from his lawyer. 8 from members of his board. And a flood of text messages that all seemed to say the same thing: have you seen the news? The photos. Dylan opened his news app with a sense of dread, and there it was, splashed across every gossip website and tabloid, photos of Rosa leaving his house that morning, wearing his white shirt, her legs bare, her hair messy from sleep. Another photo showed Dylan's car parked outside a corner store late last night, with Rosa visible in the passenger seat, wrapped in what looked like Dylan's jacket. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire Dylan Ashford's mystery woman, who is she? Ashford moving on fast after Blackwell betrayal. New romance or scandal? Ashford spotted with unknown woman. Maid or mistress? Inside Dylan Ashford's latest controversy. Dylan felt rage build in his chest. They had twisted everything, made something innocent look dirty and scandalous. Rosa, who had done nothing wrong, was now being painted as some kind of opportunist or homewrecker. Rosa looked at the phone screen over his shoulder, and he watched the color drain from her face. Oh no, she whispered. Oh no, no, no. This is not your fault, Dylan said quickly. These people are vultures. They look for any story they can twist. Dylan, they think I slept with you, Rosa said, her voice rising with panic. They think I am using you for money. This will ruin me. I will never get another job. People will think I am exactly the kind of person I hate. I will fix this, Dylan promised. I will release a statement. I will explain everything. Rosa shook her head, tears building in her eyes. You cannot fix this. The damage is already done. Your mother is probably furious. Your board will think you are having a breakdown. And I will be known as the maid who tried to trap a billionaire. Dylan's phone rang, his mother's name flashing on the screen. He ignored it. It rang again immediately. And again. You have to answer, Rosa said quietly. They are not going to stop until you do. Dylan answered, putting the phone on speaker. His mother's voice came through sharp and angry. Dylan Alexander Ashford, what on earth were you thinking? Photos of you with some woman are all over the internet. Who is she? What were you doing? Do you have any idea how this looks? Mother, Dylan said, his voice firm. Rosa is my new housekeeper. She came for an interview during the storm last night. She stayed because it was not safe for her to leave. That is all. In your shirt? Patricia's voice dripped with skepticism. Dylan, I was not born yesterday. This looks terrible. The board is calling an emergency meeting. They want to discuss whether you are fit to continue as CEO. That is ridiculous, Dylan snapped. My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run the company. Everything you do reflects on the company, Patricia countered. Especially after the James situation. Investors are already nervous. Now they see photos of you with some random woman, and they are wondering if you are having a breakdown. Rosa flinched at the words, random woman, and Dylan saw the hurt flash across her face. He felt his anger intensify. Her name is Rosa Delgado, Dylan said coldly. And she is not some random woman. She is a person who deserves respect, something you clearly know nothing about. The line went silent for a moment. Then Patricia's voice came back, quieter but no less cutting. Dylan, think carefully about what you are doing. This woman, whoever she is going to cost you everything if you are not careful. Send her away. Fix this mess. And get to the board meeting in 2 hours. The call ended, and Dylan stood there, his hand clenched around his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Rosa's decision. I have to go, Rosa said, setting down her mug and moving toward the door. This is getting out of control, and I cannot be the reason your life falls apart. Wait, Dylan said, following her. Please do not leave like this. Dylan, I cannot stay, Rosa said, her voice breaking. Your mother is right. I do not belong in your world. I am just a girl from Brooklyn trying to take care of her sick sister. I cannot handle photographers and board meetings and people thinking I am some kind of gold digger. I do not care what people think, Dylan insisted. But I do, Rosa replied, tears streaming down her face now. I care because I have worked my whole life to build something honest. My reputation is all I have. And right now, millions of people think I am exactly the kind of person I hate. She grabbed her bag from where she had left it near the door, her hands shaking as she tried to gather her things. Dylan watched helplessly, wanting to stop her but not knowing how. Rosa, he said softly. Last night you told me that being hurt does not make me weak. So let me tell you the same thing. Being scared does not make you a coward. Stay. Let me help you. Let me fix this. Rosa looked at him, her eyes red and swollen with tears. You cannot fix everything, Dylan. Some things are just broken, and no amount of money or power can put them back together. Then let me try anyway, Dylan said, stepping closer. Because last night, when I was at my lowest, you did not run away. You stayed. You helped. You made me feel less alone. And I cannot let you face this storm by yourself. Rosa's phone buzzed in her bag, and she pulled it out with shaking hands. Her face went completely white as she read the screen. "What is it?" Dylan asked, alarm rising in his chest. "It is the hospital," Rosa whispered. "Carmen collapsed this morning. They rushed her into emergency surgery. They need someone there to make decisions, and I am her only family." Without another word, Rosa ran for the door. Dylan followed immediately, grabbing his keys from the counter. "I am driving you," he said, leaving no room for argument. Rosa did not protest. They ran to his car together, and Dylan drove faster than he probably should have, weaving through Los Angeles traffic while Rosa sat in the passenger seat, crying silently and praying under her breath. At the hospital. They arrived at County General Hospital 40 minutes later, running through the automatic doors and up to the emergency desk. Rosa gave her sister's name, and a tired-looking nurse directed them to the surgical wing on the 3rd floor. They found the waiting area, and Rosa collapsed into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs, her whole body shaking. Dylan sat beside her, close but not touching, letting her have space while still being present. "How much is the surgery?" Dylan asked quietly. $30,000, Rosa whispered. "I have saved $8,000. I was going to ask the hospital if I could make payments, but I do not know if they will agree." Dylan pulled out his phone and made a call. Rosa looked at him with wide eyes as he spoke to someone on the other end, giving instructions, providing information, making arrangements. "What are you doing?" Rosa asked when he hung up. "I am taking care of it," Dylan said simply. "The surgery is paid for. Carmen will get the best care available. You do not have to worry about money." Rosa stared at him, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "Dylan, you cannot just pay for her surgery. That is too much. I cannot accept that." "Yes, you can," Dylan said firmly. "Because you were right last night when you said that when someone is drowning, you throw them a rope. Your sister is drowning, Rosa. And I have a rope. Let me throw it." Tears poured down Rosa's face, and before Dylan could react, she threw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder and sobbing. He wrapped his arms around her carefully, holding her while she cried out all her fear and relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered against his shirt. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the hospital waiting room, while doctors worked to save Carmen's life and the outside world spun with scandal and rumors. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was that neither of them was alone. The truth comes out. 4 hours later, a surgeon came out to tell them that Carmen's surgery had been successful. She would need time to recover, but she was going to be okay. Rosa cried again, this time with relief and joy. Dylan stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, sharing in her happiness. When Rosa finally calmed down enough to speak, she turned to Dylan with red-rimmed eyes. "I do not know how to repay you for this." "You already did," Dylan said. "Last night, you gave me something I have not had in years. You gave me honesty. You gave me kindness without expecting anything in return. You saw me at my worst and did not run away. That is worth more than any amount of money." Rosa took his hands in hers, looking directly into his eyes. "Dylan, I need to tell you something. And I need you to really hear me." "Okay," Dylan said, his heart beating faster. "Last night, when you were drunk and sad, you said a lot of things," Rosa began. "But there was one thing you kept saying over and over. You said you wished you could find someone who saw you, really saw you, not your money or your status. Someone who cared about Dylan the person, not Dylan the billionaire." Dylan nodded, remembering fragments of that conversation. "Well," Rosa continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I see you, Dylan. I see a man who has been hurt but is still kind. I see someone who wants real connections but is afraid to trust. I see someone who would rather hide his pain than burden others with it. And I see someone worth knowing, worth caring about. Dylan felt his breath catch in his throat. Rosa, are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying that despite the scandal, despite the photos, despite your mother and the board and all the chaos, I do not regret staying last night, Rosa said firmly. I do not regret getting to know you. And I do not regret being here with you now. Dylan's heart hammered in his chest. He had spent his whole adult life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. But Rosa was different. She had turned down his money. She had refused charity. She had only accepted his help for her sister after he insisted. And now she was standing here, in the middle of her own crisis, telling him that he mattered to her. I need to tell you something too, Dylan said, his voice rough with emotion. The board wants me at a meeting in an hour. They are going to ask me to distance myself from you. They are going to tell me that being associated with you is bad for business, bad for my image, bad for the company. Rosa's face fell, and she started to pull her hands away, but Dylan held on tighter. And I am going to tell them no, Dylan continued. I am going to tell them that you are the most honest, hard-working, genuine person I have met in years. I am going to tell them that if they have a problem with you being in my life, then they have a problem with me. Dylan, you cannot do that, Rosa protested. You will lose everything. I have had everything, Dylan said simply. Money, success, power, all of it. And I was still miserable. But last night, sitting on my hallway floor with you, I felt something I have not felt in years. I felt like myself. Like the real me, not the version I have to be for everyone else. He reached up and gently brushed a tear from her cheek. So if choosing you means losing some board members or investors or even the whole company, then I will lose it all. Because none of it matters if I am alone and miserable. Rosa's breath hitched, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You do not even really know me. We just met. I know enough, Dylan said, echoing her words from the night before. I know you are brave enough to walk through a storm for a job opportunity. I know you are smart enough to fix a broken generator. I know you are compassionate enough to take care of a drunk stranger. And I know you are strong enough to carry your sister's medical crisis while dealing with a scandal you did not create. He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. Rosa Delgado, I am not asking you to be my girlfriend or my partner or anything official right now. I am just asking if I can keep getting to know you. If I can take you to dinner. If I can call you when I am having a bad day. If I can be part of your life, whatever that looks like. Rosa looked at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for any sign of insincerity or manipulation. But all she saw was honesty, vulnerability, and hope. Yes, she whispered. Yes, you can. Dylan felt like he could breathe for the first time in hours. He pulled Rosa into another hug, holding her close while the hospital buzzed around them with activity and life. They stayed like that until Rosa's phone buzzed with a message saying she could go see Carmen. As she headed toward her sister's room, she looked back at Dylan with a small smile. Thank you for being here, she said softly. Where else would I be? Dylan replied. And for the first time in a very long time, Dylan Ashford felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The board meeting. Dylan drove straight from the hospital to his company headquarters, still wearing the same clothes from that morning, his hair messy, his face unshaven. He probably looked terrible, but he did not care. He had more important things to worry about than his appearance. The boardroom was on the 35th floor, all glass walls and expensive furniture designed to intimidate and impress. When Dylan walked in, 12 pairs of eyes turned toward him with expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed anger. His mother, Patricia, sat at the far end of the table, her face a mask of controlled fury. You are late, said Richard Whitmore, the oldest board member and his father's former business partner. And you look like you slept on the street. I was at the hospital, Dylan said, taking his seat at the head of the table. Something more important came up. Patricia's perfectly painted lips pressed into a thin line. More important than addressing the scandal that is currently destroying your reputation? Yes, Dylan said simply. Much more important. The board members exchanged glances, and Dylan could practically see them calculating how to handle him. They thought he was having a breakdown, that his judgment was compromised by stress and betrayal. They thought they knew better than him what he needed. Dylan, began Jennifer Hartman, the chief financial officer. We understand you are going through a difficult time. The situation with James Blackwell was devastating for all of us. But these photos with this woman, they make you look unstable. Investors are nervous. Stock prices have dropped 3% just this morning. Her name is Rosa, Dylan corrected. Rosa Delgado. And she is not this woman. She is a person with a name and a story, and I would appreciate it if you all showed her the basic respect of using it. Fine, Richard said, waving his hand dismissively. This Rosa person. Who is she, really? Where did she come from? What does she want from you? Dylan leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. Rosa came to my house for a job interview during the storm. Her clothes got wet fixing my generator, so she borrowed my shirt. She stayed because I was drunk and she was worried I might hurt myself. She did not take advantage of me. She did not sell her story to the press. She did not ask me for money. She took care of me when I needed help, and then the paparazzi turned it into something ugly. So she is your housekeeper? Patricia asked, her tone making it clear what she thought of that. She was supposed to be, Dylan said. But now I am not sure what she is. A friend, maybe. Someone I care about. Someone who matters to me. The room erupted with voices, everyone speaking at once. Dylan heard fragments of their concerns. You cannot be serious. She is clearly after your money. This will destroy your credibility. You need to distance yourself immediately. Dylan stood up, and the force of his movement silenced the room. I am not distancing myself from Rosa. Not now, not ever. So if that is what you called me here to demand, then this meeting is over. Dylan, sit down, Patricia said coldly. We are not finished. Yes, we are, Dylan replied. Because I am done letting you all tell me how to live my life. I am done pretending that money and status and public opinion matter more than actual human connections. And I am done being ashamed of caring about someone just because she does not fit your narrow definition of acceptable. Richard stood as well, his face red with anger. Your father would be ashamed of you right now. He built this company with discipline and control, not by chasing after housemaids like some kind of lovesick fool. My father, Dylan said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, died alone in his office at midnight because he cared more about quarterly earnings than he did about his own family. He missed my childhood. He missed my graduation. He missed every important moment of my life because this company was the only thing that mattered to him. And if you think I want to end up like that, then you do not know me at all. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Patricia looked like she had been slapped. Richard sat back down slowly, his mouth opening and closing without sound. I am not my father, Dylan continued, his voice steady now. I am not going to sacrifice my happiness and my humanity for a company that will replace me the second I am not useful anymore. James already proved that loyalty means nothing in this world. He was like a brother to me, and he sold me out for $20 million. So forgive me if I do not trust any of you to have my best interests at heart. Jennifer cleared her throat. Dylan, we are just trying to protect you. This woman could be using you. You are vulnerable right now after the betrayal. You are not thinking clearly. I am thinking more clearly than I have in years, Dylan said. And Rosa is not using me. In fact, she is the only person in my life right now who wants absolutely nothing from me except honesty. She turned down my money. She refused my help. She only accepted when her sister's life was on the line, and even then she felt guilty about it. Her sister? Patricia asked sharply. What does her sister have to do with this? Dylan met his mother's eyes, refusing to back down. Rosa's 19-year-old sister had emergency heart surgery this morning. Rosa has been working 3 jobs trying to save money for the procedure. She was at my house last night because she walked through a storm to make it to a job interview she could not afford to miss. She stayed to help me because she is a good person, not because she wanted something from me. He paused, letting that sink in. And I paid for the surgery. All of it. Because someone needed help and I had the resources to provide it. That is what money should be for, not just accumulating more money or impressing people at parties. The board members looked at each other uncomfortably. Patricia's expression had shifted from anger to something more complicated, something almost like uncertainty. So here is what is going to happen, Dylan said, his voice firm and final. I am going to continue getting to know Rosa. I am going to support her however she needs. And if any of you have a problem with that, then you can have my resignation right now. Dylan, do not be rash, Jennifer said quickly. We are not asking you to resign. Then stop asking me to choose between my humanity and this company, Dylan shot back. Because I will choose humanity every single time. The press conference. 3 hours later, Dylan stood in front of a wall of cameras and microphones, his publicist beside him looking both terrified and resigned. He had refused to let her write a statement for him. He was going to speak from the heart, and whatever happened would happen. The room was packed with reporters, all of them hungry for a scandal, all of them ready to twist his words into the most sensational headline possible. Dylan took a deep breath and began. Good afternoon. My name is Dylan Ashford, and I am here to address the photos and stories that have been circulating about me and Rosa Delgado. First, let me be absolutely clear, Rosa did nothing wrong. She came to my home for a job interview during a severe storm. Her clothes got wet while she was helping me fix my backup generator, so she borrowed a shirt. She stayed because I was going through a personal crisis and she was concerned for my safety. The reporters immediately started shouting questions, but Dylan held up his hand. I am not finished. Rosa Delgado is one of the most honest, hardworking, compassionate people I have ever met. She has spent years caring for her sick sister while working multiple jobs to pay medical bills. She does not come from money. She does not have powerful connections. She is just a person trying to survive and help her family, like millions of other people in this country. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. The photos you have all seen make it look like something inappropriate happened between us. That is not true. But even if it were, it would be nobody's business but ours. Rosa is not a scandal. She is not a story for you to exploit. She is a human being who deserves respect and privacy. More shouting questions, more flashing cameras. Dylan continued speaking over them. I am not going to apologize for caring about someone who does not fit society's expectations. I am not going to distance myself from Rosa to protect my image or my company's stock price. And I am not going to let any of you paint her as something she is not just because it makes a better headline. He took a breath, feeling the weight of what he was about to say next. I have spent my entire adult life building walls around myself, keeping people at a distance, trusting only a select few. And every single time I let someone in, they betrayed me. They took what they wanted and left. So I stopped trying. I stopped believing that genuine connections were possible. His voice softened. And then Rosa walked into my life during a storm, and she reminded me that good people still exist. That kindness without ulterior motives is still possible. That sometimes people help you just because it is the right thing to do. The reporters had quieted, listening now instead of shouting. Dylan finished his statement. So no, I will not be distancing myself from Rosa. Instead, I am going to do everything I can to make sure she and her sister have the support they need. And if that costs me my reputation or my company or my place in Los Angeles high society, then so be it. Because I would rather be happy with someone real than miserable and alone surrounded by people who only care about what I can do for them. He stepped away from the microphones, ignoring the explosion of questions that followed. His publicist chased after him, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. "Dylan, what were you thinking?" she demanded. "You just made yourself a target. Every gold digger in America is going to come after you now, claiming they are the real thing just like Rosa." "Then I will deal with it," Dylan said calmly. "But I am not going to throw Rosa to the wolves to save myself." Rosa's doubts. That evening, Dylan returned to the hospital to check on Rosa and Carmen. He found Rosa sitting beside her sister's bed, holding Carmen's hand while the younger woman slept peacefully. Rosa looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked up when Dylan entered, and he saw something in her expression that made his stomach drop. Fear. Doubt. Guilt. "I saw your press conference," Rosa said quietly, careful not to wake Carmen. "Dylan, you should not have done that." "Why not?" Dylan asked, pulling up a chair beside her. "Because now everyone thinks we are together," Rosa said. "They think I am your girlfriend or your mistress or whatever. And when this all falls apart, when you realize that I am just a regular person with a boring life and nothing special about me, the fallout is going to be even worse." "Rosa," Dylan began, but she cut him off. "No, listen to me," she insisted. "You are running on emotion right now. You are hurt and angry about James, and I happen to be there at the right moment to make you feel better. But that is not real, Dylan. That is not a foundation for anything lasting." Dylan felt frustration rise in his chest. "You think I do not know the difference between gratitude and genuine feelings? I think you are a good man who has been hurt badly, and right now I represent something safe and uncomplicated," Rosa said. "But I am not uncomplicated, Dylan. I have a sister who needs constant care. I have medical debt even with your help. I have a tiny apartment in a bad neighborhood. I have a life that looks nothing like yours." "Good," Dylan said firmly. "Because my life is full of fake people and empty relationships. I do not want someone who fits perfectly into my world. I want someone real." Rosa shook her head, tears gathering in her eyes. "You say that now. But what happens in 6 months when you realize that I cannot attend your fancy parties because I do not know which fork to use? What happens when your business associates look down on me? What happens when you get tired of explaining why you are with someone so far beneath your social class?" "You are not beneath anyone," Dylan said, anger creeping into his voice now. "And if my business associates have a problem with you, then they are not people I want to associate with." "That is easy to say," Rosa replied. "But you have spent your whole life in that world. You cannot just walk away from it because of some woman you met during a storm." Dylan stood up, pacing the small hospital room. "Why are you fighting this so hard? Why are you trying to convince Miri?" Try this response paused because Claude reached its max length for a message. Hit continue to nudge Claude along.